The more complex the communication, the more necessary something like video is to deliver it, right? So we want to automate these things, but the more complex the communication. So if it requires guidance, video is for you. And there is, look, a lot of people want to grab video and use it in sales. It's a great place to use video. They want to use it in customer success. Another great place to use video, but it's best used in those instances in any role, really, when it's a complex thing you're communicating.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, folks and people, to this episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My name is Anthony Taylor, the managing partner at SME Strategy. We facilitate strategic planning sessions. We help teams implement their strategic plans, and we're always looking for new ways, tools, and expertise to help our clients and friends accomplish their goals. And so today, I'm very excited to speak to Darin Dawson, who is the co-founder and president of BombBomb.com. Darin, what's happening today?
How's it going, Anthony? Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm so excited to hear. I mean, we chatted in our pre-roll kind of thing about what you've learned as a CEO over the past little while, like growing and building your company. But for those that might not know you by name, tell everybody who you are, what you do, what gets you up in the morning.
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of BombBomb. I started this crazy video messaging platform back in 2006, technically, is when we founded the idea of the business and got it going. I quit my day job in 2011. So I've been doing this just over 10 years. It's been a wild ride. Went from, me and my buddy and, like 3 people to now over 150 folks working mostly in Colorado, but then we also in the US and then in 8 other states in the US. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting time. Now I think we have like almost 100,000 users too worldwide. So it's crazy. Yeah. Lots of fun, lots of hard. It's all both of those things most of the time.
I got that. What have you learned in those 10, 15, 20 years growing your product from 100,000 users, like both as a CEO and as a person? What are some of those kind of formative things that you've really taken away as key learnings for you as you've grown?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, there's a bunch of them, right? And I think they're cyclical, meaning that they kind of come to you in these different, I think business has these different phases, either in its age or size of a number of employees you have, or number of customers you have, types of clients you have. I think, we endeavored to have what we called a beachhead strategy in the beginning, right? That we started in real estate. We found a good go-to-market strategy in that. I think we learned a lesson, and I'll unpack a bit on this through the pandemic. The pandemic, I feel, taught us a lot of lessons. I think that I can kind of roll back into more recently. But we started with a beachhead strategy that we thought we just want to own something and make it very defensible. And so we found that our product, which is, if you don't know BombBomb, we make it easy for you to create video messages in anything you're using. So you can create video messages in LinkedIn, video messages from text, video messages in email. And if you're thinking, well, why can I do that already? Well, you can, but it's hard. Like this phone that I have right here makes huge videos that don't, how the recipient receives them is kind of all over the place. So we make that consistent. The experience for the recipient is where we focus most of our time, and the trackability of that, the calls to action involved in that. But it's about video messaging. We believe that people have intrinsic value and that we want you to build more connections with more people more often. I think that's becoming more popular now, the personal versus the automated. And so that's what we do. But back then we wanted to create a beachhead strategy and just really defend that space. And we did that very well. We grew quickly to 50, 60,000 real estate users. And then we branched out into other verticals like mortgage, insurance, financial services. And then the pandemic hit, and which we've all still kind of are still going through. And what happened in March of 2020 really was a rush to our service. So we had a huge, we did our revenue goals for second quarter were met in the month of April, just by itself. So we had an explosive growth. And what that told us, listen, I've been doing that at that point for like 9 years. I've been doing it for 10 now. And we thought, man, it's finally the year of video. Okay. So ever since I've started this business, it's been kind of the year of video. And I think I've been waiting for people, but video has its own problems. People don't like how they look. They don't like how they sound. And adoption sometimes is tough. And so we really work hard on that with our customers. We've really gotten through that. But with the pandemic, it was like, man, everybody has to do this now. And they did. And so we launched, and we thought now would be more of a time to go more horizontal, that this is really for everybody and everybody is our customer. And so the lesson I learned is that, yeah, but we should have stayed true to our focuses. So we really know, like, people who we help the most with video messaging, maybe this is you're listening, are people who work with people where repeat and referral business is a big deal. Like that I'm going to continue to transact with you over time is a big deal. Also, when a human being is necessary in the transaction, like, it's a hard thing, like planning your finances for your future, or, how do I buy this house, or what kind of mortgage should I get, or I'm building a new home, what's required of me? Those things require a human being to walk you through. So we crush it for people who are in that type of business, right? Because we help them explain complex things through video. If I send you an email and it's black text and a white screen, kind of just looks the same. But with a video, I can walk you through these things.
So I just want to take, because that was a lot there. So I want to try to summarize that. So started this company, great traction in that core metric, because the core metric really, or the core, the beachhead, vertical, as you would call it, vertical, really met that like outcome that you wanted. Is like, hey, like person to person.
Or the user. Yeah,
exactly. And then what I really took away from what you shared as it relates to communication and not just your product is that recipient experience. Mm-hmm. And so now where you guys crush it, it's using video for people to use as a tool to make sure that the recipient is having a good experience around the communication. Because you and I both know that it doesn't matter what I say if it doesn't land with the other person. And so one might say it's around human-centered communication. Would you say that's kind of fair to say?
That's right. You're feeding me there. Yeah, we recently wrote a book called Human-Centered Communication, and we hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller on that. It was a great book written by Steve Pastinelli, our CMO, and our chief evangelist, Ethan Butte. And it really just centers on this idea that, look, the more complex the communication, the more necessary something like video is to deliver it, right? So we want to automate these things, but the more complex the communication, so if it requires guidance, video is for you. And there is, look, a lot of people want to grab video and use it in sales. It's a great place to use video. They want to use it in customer success. Another great place to use video. But it's best used in those instances, in any role, really, when it's a complex thing you're communicating. That show and tell is required, because you can do screen share with our software. But more importantly, as we're looking at each other now, you get to see the person sending the message. And human beings have this ability that our brains are taking in the information. When I'm looking at another human, for instance, if you can see my hands, our lizard brain, our ancestral brain goes, you can trust them. They're probably not hiding a weapon behind them, right? Like, it's just these nonverbal pieces of communication that we lose the context in when it's just text on black text on a white screen vis-a-vis email or social media, whatever that is. And I mean, we've all had a message that's been misconstrued, that's been taken the wrong way. That's typically when it's that type of communication, because if our brains can take the feedback, all the receptors in of their eye contact, how they emote, the tone of their voice, these all tell you, Anthony, something about how I'm trying to communicate to you right now, right? And so when we remove those things, we really put ourselves at a disadvantage. And that's what we are all about. And that's what we wrote the book about. And so, yeah, if I could tie it all the way back to that pandemic, I think everybody grabbed hold of it. But then at the same time, I think focus is really the key. And then staying true, we kind of got too broad in our approach. So if it's the lesson learned, right? That if you have people listening, the lesson I learned was sometimes the marketing conditions can move you off of your path that was working very well. And it's not a shiny object. I know that's used a lot, but man, all the indicators told us that, man, it's time to go big horizontal, but we got too broad in the problem we were solving. Does that make sense?
Hey, sorry to interrupt. It's Anthony here again. I just wanted to let you know if you're enjoying today's episode, I'd love it if you could give us a review and a comment to let us know where you're listening from. It means a lot to us. It helps us with the algorithm. It also helps us get into the hands of more people so that we can keep bringing great guests onto the show. So please do that. Also, if you or your team are planning a strategic planning offsite coming up, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to see if we're a fit to facilitate, to support you and your team getting on the same page and getting clear about where you want to go. So you can visit SMEstrategy.net or click the link in the description. We'd appreciate both of those things. And now get us back to the episode. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's kind of two things, like we got kind of two simultaneous tracks. It's a good thing we got video to make it more clear. So one is there's the medium and the message. So that regardless if you're using video, but the reason that you guys blew up so fast was the pandemic and the environment around it took away a tool that people had. They relied on in-person communication because that was the only communication we knew. We still had to do our jobs. And so we had to say, hey, how can I replace this? And replace, and I believe augment in a lot of ways. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with video that asynchronous communication more effectively, but really making sure you got the medium and the message so you get the result. So that's one part. The other piece that I took away from lessons learned, as I deal with a lot of CEOs in our strategic planning practice, is March 2020, some businesses skyrocketed and got so busy. Some businesses really got crushed. It was kind of like a 50-50 mix. But what was both interesting is both cases was a reaction to market conditions. So even if you had a strategy, what happened in March, I try not to say the word because it doesn't go good for YouTube. What happens to your strategy gets blown up. And so either way, you kind of have to, and it sounds like where you're at right now, Darin, is you're trying to like get into your sweet spot so that you guys are still like outcome focused of where you really can provide the most value so that in 5 years or 3 years, you don't get so diluted that you become a commodity in the marketplace.
Yes. That's it. You know, it's interesting when you think about the recipient, the message, and like everybody, and we kind of are doing this now in remote work. We're just taking what we did in the office and we try and make it happen in Zoom. And I think that's wrong. We got to rethink how we're doing meetings and maybe the cadence of those meetings. Zoom fatigue is real or whatever, that fatigue is real. Now, for us, it's kind of the same thing. People grabbed our video messaging product and they just applied it to what they were doing already because they couldn't do it anymore. And that is a problem. Okay. So look, if your sales communication messaging sucks, it's going to suck on video. Hope doesn't. It's the worst word I'll use.
That you can absolutely, you can use any swear words you want. Yeah.
If that is not good now, video is not going to help it. And so you have got it, but where video crushes it. And we know this, we've known this we've been doing this since 2006. There wasn't a freaking camera in the iPhone when we decided to start this company. And so we help people when you have a complex message needs to be delivered. So yeah, it makes sense. Financial services, real estate, insurance, mortgage, loan officers. That's who we've been and who we've been successful with. But then apply that to maybe who's listening. Yeah, you're a manager communicating to your team. Sometimes that gets complex. Product people talking to executives in their company about product roadmap, complexities in the product, friction in the product, things that need to be described and figured out. And that application I'm sharing there saves a ton of time. Back to that, how we do meetings today. Is that the same way you've been doing meetings before? That has to change a bit. And I think we can save a lot of meetings by sending some videos that talk about some of these hard things. We used to be, well, it's too hard, it's too complex. We got to have a meeting and all talk about it. Or you could do a screen share with you captioned in it, talking about that complex thing, send it to those 5 executives or whomever it might be in the org, have that meeting asynchronously, right? And let them comment back on it. One of the things that we do is we transcribe the video as well. So right there, if you ever experience a BombBomb video, you get the video and then next to it is the transcription. So you can dialogue and go through it and you can jump back and forth. So it's just a better, what we call more a human-centered way to communicate. So you get the feedback of the human being along with the context and text of the communication, we believe that's a better way to do that. So what we're trying to do now is really revolutionize the way people think about doing work in this more remote environment, because that didn't change. Everybody just stayed remote. We still are. But how can we do that differently, I think, is the challenge now. I face that every day.
Yeah, I got that. And I think it really, again, like, not to plug the book, which I'm happy to do, but it's really around that human-centered communication. And often people get so stuck on the what and they forget about the why. And so it's like, hey, we need to have this really long meeting, or we're going to do our strategy off. I'm going to communicate information. There's so many better ways to do it, that if you're focused on the recipient versus focused on the deliverer, it can go way more. So for everybody listening, don't forget about the user. And that's why we're thinking about you, is like, hey, how can this be valuable? So Darin, we're going to switch gears a little bit. And I'd love to take us back to, let's say, maybe the past like 8 months, as your business has really started taking off. And you get what I mean by that. What were some of the things that you had to kind of grapple with, like outside of the product, in terms of growing and scaling a team? What were some of those aha lessons? What were some things that you're like, whoa, I never thought I'd encounter this, or this was a new problem that I never had to face before? And then how did you address it, or how are you addressing it?
Yeah, what's interesting is on top of that growth that we had, and we had challenges around that, but the challenge really was around people at the same time. 2021 for me is a very hard year, because whilst we were having success, we also had challenges in the dynamics of our people. Many of you might be dealing with this. It was called the Great Resignation. And as people went remote, our culture, for an example, was predominantly in office, and how we experience each other is in office. But so we started to lose people. People were pursuing other careers. The world for recruiting became flat. It used to be we competed against people maybe in Colorado and Denver and Colorado Springs, and those cities, and potentially in surrounding states, but rarely were we competing for talent out of San Francisco or New York or Cincinnati or Vancouver, for that matter. So now people can still live in Colorado Springs, which has a better cost of living, by the way, than Palo Alto, but work for a company in Palo Alto, right? And so that became a struggle for us. And so what I try to combat that is use our own ability and what we know about our product to communicate with team members. So I would do atta-girl videos or atta-boy videos. I would send videos from myself to team members I didn't get to connect with and see in the office as much, and say, hey, I saw that you did this. I just want to say thank you so much. You're crushing it. Keep up the good work. And just try and do those check-in videos asynchronously, because I don't have time to meet with everybody, but I knew they needed to see me. Okay. So started to do that more often. So, and likewise, when someone new would come to the business, a new employee, I'd send them a video and say, hey, thank you so much for choosing BombBomb. We're glad you're here. We need you. We need your expertise. It's like a welcome to the business. And then I also implemented a Friday video. So I send a video to everybody at BombBomb every Friday, updating them on what's going on in the business, what our goals are, how are we doing on our objectives, and I kind of poll everyone, what kind of content do you want in the Friday video, right? Like, it's kind of an all hands or a stand-up that I'd usually do maybe on a Friday. We used to have lunch together every Friday. Can't do that anymore. So how am I going to replace that FaceTime with everybody so they can see me, hear me, see the direction of the business, know what's going on with it? That disconnect became a problem. So I'm trying to combat that. And so far, got a lot of good feedback on those types of communications, but we continue now to do different things to try and bring that. How do we build culture now in this new paradigm that we're in?
Yeah, I got that. So obviously the talent challenge, so creating a competitive advantage from a talent place. And one of the things that I really want to focus on is, so there's the Great Resignation. So it means that there's a lot of resignation. They are resigned. They are away. And so when you resign, you're just taking a step back. Well, why is that? They're not connected. So what I heard you do and what you're doing is doing more things to keep your people connected so they aren't resigned. Make sure
Correct.
that you as a CEO have that communication line so that people are engaged. And I really like that idea of doing like a weekly video to keep people in the loop. My wife's company, their CEO does a Ask Me Anything once a month. And it's a great way to have that engagement, to have that connection so people feel connected to the company. Because if you're just at home with no one else around, you know, you got your cat or your spouse, it's not a great workplace, even though the work doesn't change. So, Darin, where can people connect with you? Where can people get your book? Where can they learn more about what you guys do?
Easy to find me. LinkedIn's the best place, honestly. LinkedIn /Darin Dawson. You just Google me and I'm there, or BombBomb. You'll find me easily. Also, you can find the book anywhere you buy books. So probably Amazon, local book retailer. We're there. We're everywhere. So that's been really well received. I think it was a timely book. Our first book was called Rehumanize Your Business. It's also a good read. And now this, I'll say one thing I think that happened during this time period that we all just lived through. Everybody went to automation in a big way. It's almost like an accelerated. And this book, it's called Human-Centered Communication, a response to digital pollution. And what we think is the digital pollution escalated. So now if after I get off this time with you, I'll just get a ton of inbound towards me, but it all looks the same, right? And that got even just crazier during the pandemic. And so now we're calling people back to being more human, more connected, more personal than ever, because people still buy from people they know, like, and trust. And we want to help people walk through that. So that's why I get the book, I think. And that's why I think it resonated and went #1 so quick, that it just was timely. And so if you're dealing with that, I'd encourage you to check it out.
Awesome. I love it. I think there's definitely a preponderance of digital garbage. And so getting overwhelmed with that. And I think leaders are dealing with that every day. So Darin, thanks so much for chatting today. It's been a blast. I just appreciate the time and great to meet you. Thanks for your energy. It was awesome.
Thanks, Anthony. You too.
So, folks, my guest today is Darin Dawson, who is the co-founder of BombBomb. You can check him out, bombbomb.com. Check out the book. I think that the world of technology is only going to continue. And so your ability as a leader to not only survive through the clutter of electronic information, but make sure that you're connected with your people is going to be critical. So be sure to develop yourself on that. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any great episodes as we support you in leading through that change. So my name is Anthony Taylor. My guest today, Darin Dawson. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.